Today on NewsWatch, world leaders gather in Paris for day 2 of the Global Climate Change Summit. But critics say the move to quell global warming could have a negative impact on America's economy. Plus, preventing government waste. See how one lawmaker plans to balance America's budget. And
anything that is programmable is hackable. Now, that being said, we live in a world where you can't just say, I'm going to forget the digital age, right?
it's a major holiday shopping week, especially on the internet. We'll show you how to protect yourself while you're shopping online. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Caitlin Burke. It's day 2 of the Global Climate Change Summit in Paris. Global leaders are strategizing on ways to reduce greenhouse gases and avert what they believe is pending environmental havoc. Here in the United States, excessive federal regulations are already taking a toll on the economy and jobs in Appalachia. Gary Lane has the latest.
Taking time away from the climate change summit, President Obama placed a single rose at a memorial honoring the 130 people killed in the November 13th Paris terrorist attacks. The president discussed defeating ISIS with world leaders in Paris, but fighting climate change topped the agenda. And the president called stopping global warming a powerful way to fight terrorism.
Nothing will deter us from building the future we want for our children. What greater rejection of those who would tear down our world than marshaling our best efforts to save it?
But critics say Mr. Obama's efforts to save the world from climate change may actually destroy parts of the U.S. economy, particularly the coal-producing industry. And excessive federal regulations are already causing hurt and hardship for many Americans. Tighter rules on greenhouse gas emissions have increased unemployment and poverty in coal-producing states like West Virginia. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, one expert points out, in the past 3 years, 27 coal mining companies in central Appalachia have filed for bankruptcy. And since 2009, 332 coal mines have shut down in West Virginia, costing close to 10,000 jobs. West Virginia's unemployment rate now stands at nearly 7%, about 2% higher than the national average. Environmental Protection Agency limits on power plant carbon dioxide emissions and other federal regulations have caused electric companies to close coal-fired plants. 1/3 of all plants nationwide are expected to shut down within the next 7 years. And while China has pledged to play a greater role in combating ISIS, many Paris Summit attendees say they want to see that country do more to fight climate change. This was the scene this week in Beijing. But President Obama says China isn't alone as a top world polluter.
The United States of America not only recognizes our role in creating this problem, we embrace our responsibility to do something about it.
The president wants the United States and other Western countries to give billions of dollars to developing countries to combat climate change. But polls show Americans are more concerned about terrorism, jobs, and the U.S. economy. And with an election year fast approaching, those issues and not climate change will likely top the agenda in Congress. Gary Lane, CBN News.
The suspect in the Colorado Planned Parenthood shooting appeared in court Monday and learned that he faces first-degree murder charges. Robert Louis Deere is accused of shooting 3 people and wounding 9 others.
The initial charge is murder in the first degree. The penalty for that charge is minimum of life in prison and maximum of death.
After Monday's hearing, the district attorney said Deere could face other charges. Police have not identified an official motive for the attack, but many witnesses believe he was motivated by his opposition to abortion. Republican presidential candidate Marco Rubio is talking about his faith to win over Iowa evangelicals. At a recent meeting with Iowa pastors, the Florida senator was asked about his relationship with Jesus Christ. Our CBN News crew was the only media in the room to capture this exclusive moment.
As far as my relationship with Jesus Christ, the best way I've been able to describe it to people that are not believers is God became a man, came down to earth, and died for our sins. He provided the ultimate sacrifice, because up to that point we lived under the law. And the law meant that we had to sacrifice an unblemished lamb to cover our sins, not erase them. God was the ultimate sacrifice. It was his own son. In essence, he was willing to do what he didn't ask Abraham to do, almost asked Abraham to do, but at the last second spared Abraham that pain. God was willing to sacrifice his own son. And just imagine how painful that was. And he became a man. And the reason why he had to become a man was not just the element of becoming a man and dying for our sins as the ultimate paschal lamb, that as a result didn't cover our sins, but completely erased them. But also because he's a God that understands us. He has felt everything we've ever felt. He has wept. He wept in pain because a friend that he loved died. He felt compassion for people. He probably had the flu or the cold. He felt pain in his flesh, not just on his crucifixion, but multiple times throughout his life. He was a human being in every way, and yet he was free of sin. So there is nothing that we're going to be asked to do in our life that he didn't do himself.
CBN political correspondent David Brody scored a one-on-one interview with Marco Rubio this week. You can see it and full coverage from Iowa on the Brody File at cbnnews.com. When government spends trillions of dollars every year, it's hard to imagine ever getting the budget under control. But if you can lift up the most ridiculous, wasteful spending for ridicule, you can maybe start chipping away. As Paul Strand reports from Capitol Hill, that's what one Oklahoma senator's goal is.
Issues, we also lay out a solution.
Senator James Lankford has had it with government's out-of-control spending and regulating.
The federal government doesn't ask, how much do we have? The federal government asks, what do we want to do? And they just put it into practice.
It hurts bad enough that government taxes away almost every dollar you make through April every year, but there's also the hidden cost of almost $15,000 a year each American household pays to cover the annual $2 trillion cost of federal regulation. It hurts even worse when you find out some of the stuff your money is paying for, like $2.6 million on a weight loss program for overweight truck drivers. The Pentagon spent $250 million in a program aimed at training and arming some 5,400 Syrian rebels to fight ISIS. But after about a year, only 60 rebels had been trained. That works out to $4 million a rebel. The Oklahoma senator calls these federal fumbles, and in a new report outlines 100 such cases, like this one that really bugs him.
The National Park Service did a study on what do bugs do when you turn on a light in a dark rural place. Every person in rural Oklahoma can tell you what bugs do when you turn on a light in a dark place.
43 million tax dollars went to build a gas station in Afghanistan to sell compressed natural gas. A comparable station elsewhere cost just $500,000. To make it worse, there's no delivery system in Afghanistan for compressed natural gas, and Afghans couldn't afford it anyway, since it costs more to convert a car to compressed natural gas than most Afghans make in a year. The same Pentagon is offering a $283,000 grant to track the daily activities of tiny woodland birds called gnatcatchers. Lankford insists there's no more time for such waste with the monstrous debt America already has. He points out if the budget goes into surplus a decade from now, as projected, and every surplus penny went to paying down the debt,
we would have to continue to do it every year for the next 460 years.
With the country closing in on $19 trillion in debt, you think there'd be the highest priority on spending only what's necessary and regulating only what's essential. But as Senator Lankford's new report shows, government waste just keeps piling up higher and higher. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
This is not a daycare, it's a university. That's the message from Everett Piper, president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University, to his students. Piper wrote a blog on the school's website denouncing the culture that has taught our kids to be self-absorbed and narcissistic. Anytime their feelings are hurt, they're the victims. The blog came after a student complained that he felt victimized by a sermon on love because the sermon made him feel bad for not showing love. Piper added, if you want the chaplain to tell you you're a victim rather than tell you that you need virtue, this may not be the university you're looking for. Coming up, Muslims from Belgium committed the Paris attacks. Find out why Jews from Belgium aren't the least bit surprised. Imagine living in fear that you could get shot simply by going to the grocery store. That's the reality for Jews living in Belgium. We've been reporting for years that Belgium is a hotbed for radical Islam. And now, the Jews who live in that country worry that they will be the next target. Dale Hurd brings us this in-depth report.
Jews have lived in Belgium for almost 2,000 years. Antwerp has been called the Jerusalem of the North. Belgium used to be a safe place for Jews. Not so much anymore. Many of the killers in the recent Paris attacks were Belgian Muslim radicals, the kind who are violently anti-Semitic. In a series of interviews conducted before the attack, Belgian Jews told CBN News that life in Belgium was still good, but the possibility of danger was ever present.
The idyllic years are over. The tranquil years are definitely over. It can come. You can go to a grocery and all of a sudden somebody could shoot you down. You can go to a museum and the same can happen.
Professor Julien Klenner was a hidden child during the Holocaust, while half of Belgium's Jews were sent to Nazi death camps. Now he must face it all again.
How comes that the Shoah was not able to quiet down people about Jews? Why didn't that disappear into the oblivion of history, like so many other ludicrous approaches? Why is it still there? What have I done to deserve that?
At the heavily protected Jewish Takamoni school in Antwerp, Director Jan Maas told us the school's history and how in World War II it was liberated by Allied troops.
So these are all American soldiers, I think, here. The U.S. Army, USA, 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 USA. We are very grateful to them.
And Maas shared how during part of the Nazi occupation of Belgium, the principal at Takamoni was an SS officer.
And I know from one of the former students, he told me, he got his Star of David here in school. He got it here in school.
Today, the school's students are threatened again by forces in Belgium that want to kill them. Michael Greenberg is the head of Jewish studies at Takamoni.
If we think that it's not enough secure to let them to go outside during the day, we keep all the students here during the day.
Most of them get over the fact that, yes, for most of the activities you need protection, you need security.
At Beth Chabad Synagogue in Brussels, Rabbi Shimon Lasker said he personally thinks reports of anti-Semitism are overblown. Yet outside, they removed the sign for the synagogue because it kept getting vandalized.
They came in the middle of the prayers, the Jewish security, to announce that when you go home, please be careful. Don't walk too many people together. Don't try to show that Jews are walking on the street. Could you imagine? That's what we have to think about. How to walk on the street?
Today you have anti-Semitism from the left and the extreme left, anti-Semitism that is going into a form that's called anti-Zionism, and you have anti-Semitism from the Arab and Muslim communities.
Vivian Teitelbaum, a member of the Brussels Region Parliament, says the government isn't doing enough to stop it.
It's being a problem in schools, it's a problem on the streets, it's a problem with graffitis on the wall, it's a problem of security, it's a problem in many different aspects of our daily lives.
In the Flemish town of Mechelen, the Holocaust Museum has been built next door to a former German army barracks, where Jews were deported to concentration camps. Claude Marinover, vice chairman of the museum and vice mayor of Antwerp, says Belgian Jews today should not have to risk being attacked in the street for looking Jewish.
There is no reason whatsoever that a Jew, religious or not, should walk down a street from a city, big or small, in Belgium, with the fear of being attacked because of that. Unacceptable.
Serge Rosen, president of the Jewish Congress in Belgium, is worried about the rise of anti-Semitism, but cautions that it is not like the pre-Nazi period.
When people start to compare the situation of the Jews now with what existed before the war, I don't think that's relevant as a comparison. I think we are well integrated in the societies. The mainstream societies accept us, respect us. The political authorities support us.
But it's a fair question to ask if some Jews are in denial over the danger they face. The same was asked of Jews in Europe during the 1930s, when it was said that the pessimist left for New York. The optimist went to Auschwitz.
Even when the trains came for them, some Jews believed they were being taken to a better life and not to certain death. Europe today is not Nazi Germany, but anti-Semitism is worsening. And yet many Jews again choose to hope because they don't want to leave.
But with the Muslim migrant surge from the Middle East, even more anti-Semitism is being imported into Europe. Baron Jacques Brochi is a neurosurgeon and Belgian senator.
They import the conflict of the Middle East, and due to that, the message is not a message of living together, it's not a message of love, it's a message of sometimes killing Jews.
For most Jews everywhere, whether to stay or go comes down to the welfare of their children.
And this is where I think today the Jewish community in Brussels, I'm talking about people who were born in Belgium, are starting to ask themselves, is Belgium the place for the future of their children or the future for them to continue living?
And for increasing numbers of Jews, the answer to that question is no.
Security? Look, send your kids to a Jewish school here in Brussels or even in Antwerp. What do you see? Paratroopers? Is that a normal life?
After the recent Paris attack, Zaka, the Israeli emergency response team, held drills with Belgian Jews on how to deal with terror attacks and so-called mass casualty events, a clear sign that some fear the worst.
Belgium has to start fighting so that its Jewish community can stay here, because a democracy that cannot defend its minorities is not a democracy anymore.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, in Brussels and Antwerp, Belgium.
Up next, cyber shopping for Christmas. It may be convenient, but it isn't always safe. We'll tell you what to look for after this. It's Cyber Shopping Week, and Americans are being inundated with online Christmas sales. The deals can be great, but it's important to know the risks of shopping online. One of the biggest dangers comes from using public Wi-Fi. Think of the last time you surfed the web on public Wi-Fi while enjoying a cappuccino, eating a meal, or waiting for a plane. Now think of the information you entered, your password, credit card, maybe even your social security number. Anytime you're using public Wi-Fi, chances are there's a hacker nearby with their own laptop trying to steal your information.
Anything that is programmable is hackable. Now, that being said, we live in a world where you can't just say, I'm going to forget the digital age, right? Just like you can't prevent crime, but what you can do is not make yourself a target.
Brian Krallis is vice president of SurMD, a company specializing in cybersecurity. He warns that if someone wants to steal your information, it's not hard to do.
You could literally take anybody who understands even a little bit about computers, and if they were to do a search on the internet, within 10 minutes, they could have an exact list, step by step, of how to hack a public Wi-Fi.
Armed with that information, we decided to see for ourselves by asking an ethical hacker to snoop on my computer in a coffee shop. I entered a fake username and password into a bank website, and within seconds, he had my information. My hacker, 22-year-old college student Dallas Crilly.
So basically, I just set my computer over there, and I have a couple programs running that are essentially listening to everything that's going on the network. And one of them in particular is listening for things like usernames and passwords.
At age 12, Crilly's desire to beat a computer game led to an interest in hacking.
There was a game called Neopets, and I'm the type of person that wants to be the best at everything, and so I figured out the way to win at Neopets optimally would be to create programs that played the game for me. And so I started going on forums and talking to people who had no idea that I was 12, learning the tricks of the trade, and eventually I was making money in my sleep on Neopets writing these programs. And from there, some of these same people that I met online were hackers, and I started learning more and more about that.
He jokes that he uses his powers for good. At 14, he helped small businesses protect themselves from hackers, and now designing secure business websites.
The assumption that you're going to be safe is the biggest security hole in any network or any institution.
The most common stolen information: credit cards, usernames, passwords, and sensitive emails.
It can happen anywhere, and it doesn't take somebody sinister or somebody who looks like maybe they're a terrorist from another country hacking into your system. It's happening all over the place.
Something else to be aware of: the growing number of fake public Wi-Fi networks set up by hackers.
Cell phones can be many what we call Wi-Fi hotspots. And so somebody could be sitting here, they could be sitting in a Starbucks, wherever, and they could set up their network, but they can name it whatever they want. So if you're sitting in a Starbucks, they can name it Starbucks. If you're sitting here in Cachets, they can name it Cachets Wi-Fi. So now you're logging on to actually their Wi-Fi. And now, once again, they're tracking everything that you do.
Experts like Krallis and Crilly stress that the best way to keep your information safe is to assume that it's always at risk. One important tip for people online shopping: don't ever go shopping using public Wi-Fi. You put in your credit card information and that can easily be grabbed. Stay with us. We'll be right back. An astonishing gift dropped in a Salvation Army red kettle is the largest donation ever in the Minneapolis area. The annual Christmas kettle drive mostly collects spare change from holiday shoppers outside stores. On Saturday, a couple dropped in a check for $500,000. The couple has given to the Army in the past and wishes to remain anonymous. A spokesperson for Minnesota and North Dakota says it could be the biggest check they've ever received in the two states, and it comes at just the right time. The territory was about $500,000 behind the same point last year. That's it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care about most at cbnnews.com. Have a great day.